Today we have a great guest. We have Michael Kopf, and he's a paranormal investigator, a podcaster, and a Reiki master. And I always had questions about Reiki masters, but I'm going to save that. Um, Michael, thank you for being on the show. And can you tell us what made you interested in the paranormal?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And I gotta say, Paul, you were one of my favorite episodes. So thank you for having me on your show as
thank,
well.
thank you.
So, what got me in the paranormal was actually where growing up, I would see shadows, figures out of the corner of my eye. And growing up in the metaphysical field, I figured, oh, these are just spirits. Okay. They're not harming me. No, no, nothing to worry about. We're just playing games. And then getting a little bit older, I start to have memories of experiences when I was a kid. And my first one that I had recall of was at 2, where I met two beings. I'll give you guys the shorter version because it can get very long. But
Now lay it on us, man. This is interesting.
so how it unfolded was in my teenage years, I started having memories of falling down a shaft at 2 and talking with a being. And it could have been a star being or another type of being. I don't know for sure, but it was a beautiful light being. I'll say that much. And I would ask my parents, why is my eyebrow cut? There's no hair that grows in one spot. And they said that's where a wire cut you when you fell down the shaft. So I was like, okay, so I did fall down a shaft. So I was able to confirm that part. And then fast forward another like 20 years, and I start doing a podcast show, and this lady from Greece, who's a dear friend of mine, she goes, did something happen to you at 2? I said, yeah. She goes, do you want to know more about it? I was like, absolutely. So she goes, the being that, and she air quotes accidentally pulled you into the shaft was not the being that you saw and talked to. I was like, oh, she goes, there was a second being. So I didn't even know about 2. I only knew of 1 in my own personal recall. And so I was like, okay. And she goes, yeah, and you had a conversation with this being where the conversation you remember having did happen. So I was like, okay. And that conversation consisted of me, keep in mind, 2 years old, saying to this being, if I'm to help humanity and help people, I need these gifts available at these times. And this is how I want the unfolding to take place. And next thing I know, I get up off the ground. I have a basement that's concrete, no broken bones, no damage to any muscles or tendons or ligaments. Just kind of one of those like you brush your shoulder and just walk away. And I couldn't help but thinking, how incredible that was that I fell down a shaft, hit the concrete, and walked away. So fast forward another year, and I'm talking with someone, and I go to tell the story, and my mom, the night before, goes, you keep telling the story of when you were 2, but you leave out one or two crucial elements. And I go, what is that? She goes, first, it was winter time. So you were dressed up, and imagine late 70s, early 80s, how little kids were dressed for winter, covered from head to toe in those lovely outfits. And she said, you were on the second floor and I had put plywood over the vent opening. So the beam that accidentally pulled me in had moved the plywood out of the way so that I would enter into the shaft. And I realized at this point I had to be taken out of time, because if you imagine second story, first story, basement on a house, that fall in free fall mode is what, 3 to 5 seconds? This conversation that I explained having could no way take place at this in that amount of time. So something pulled me out of time and then put me back in time. So that was my at this first paranormal type memory of unfolding and realizing I've grown up in the paranormal and never even realized it, because the paranormal was not a thing back then. I mean, in the 80s, really the only thing paranormal around was the movie Ghostbusters, and nobody's going to look at that and go, hey, that was my experience.
Well, they also, too, they had that movie, The Entity, which supposedly was a true story. And did you ever see that one, Michael?
I did, and I'm thankful I saw it in the later years, because if I had saw it growing up, I probably would not be in the paranormal field today.
What are I know Phil and Zandine's probably got some questions, so I'm gonna let them go ahead.
I was just gonna say the way you explain the story, it makes sense from the fact of, I mean, people are always thinking they can predict how aliens think or how these things go, but if they're this intelligent, it would have to involve some steps that aren't just, easily explainable or that simple. I mean, it just so as I was listening to your story, I'm like the touching of your brain, the awakening, I should say. Because if you know some of the abductees or people that have contact, they end up having different, talents or senses or whatever it might be later. And you seem like a really smart gentleman. I think your brain was awakened at that time, probably.
And Zandine, an interesting thing that someone pointed out when the last time I was telling the story, was I had said the cool thing was being taken out of time and not being hurt. And the person that was interviewing me goes, no, the really cool thing was you could understand and communicate with this being. I had never thought about it, because it's like, it happened. So it's like, I didn't even think about, oh my God, were we in English, or what language were we using?
You got it started early on you. They got it going. Like, yeah.
How long would you say that conversation, or I guess if it wasn't words, thoughts, the communication, how long do you think it actually, what did it feel like? We realized it was probably, what, a 6, maybe 7 foot drop. So like you said, about 3 seconds, but what did it feel like to you?
I wouldn't say 6 to 7 feet. I would say an average roof or ceiling on a house is 8 feet. So you got 8 feet and then another 8 feet and then the basement. So it was quite a drop, but
you went from the second floor through the first floor and then down to the basement?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I thought you were on the first floor and you just dropped down.
No, I was on the second floor. At this,
wow, and you didn't get hurt? That is a miracle.
I know. And my friend from Greece is like, yes, you've been protected. You have energy around you I've never seen. And it's protecting you ever since you were pretty much born, I guess, or 2. So I've been blessed with that. And to me, it felt like probably 5-10 minutes, because I mean, you're having dialogue and working out details. So I mean, to me, it didn't feel like, yeah, this was a quick in and out meeting of, yep, this is what we're doing. Okay, good. Everybody's on board. Good. Go. Do your thing. I mean, I'm sure there was back and forth saying, you sure you want this to unfold this way? Do we need this gift? Do we need that gift? Can we skip this part?
How old were you again when you said this happened?
2.
2. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
do you
surreal.
do you find that the paranormal and the cosmology or ufology, like they're connected for you? Like you get both energies, they're like mixed? Because
At this
it sounds to me like you might have had a lot of experiences based on that if it started that early.
at this to me, I would say they are most definitely mixed and go hand in hand. And I'll preface before fully answering that, Zandine, with everybody like a year or two ago was asking me like, what is paranormal? Because it's a term used so commonly now. Everybody has their own definition, and so they're like, so what is it? And I had the opportunity to do an online article, and so I did an article about what is the paranormal. And after writing it, at this bottom line I got was the paranormal is anything unexplained. And so my mind just went boom, and my show totally took and opened the floodgates. And so that's why, for me, along with that and my experiences growing up, I had to say UFOs, aliens, portals, all of that at this are paranormal.
Yeah, let me go.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Your reasoning, definitely.
Now,
The only problem I find is a lot of people, when you say paranormal, because of all the TV shows,
Yeah.
they think we're going to places
Right.
and making stuff up or talking with spirits or ghosts. And I'm like, yeah, that's part of it. But we're also going, is this spirit that I'm talking to in this dimension or in this timeline? Or is this a past, present? Where is the spirit coming from? And trying to figure that out. And what blew my mind away was somebody once told me, they go, when you're on an investigation and you see someone like a glimpse of doing their routine, and you think that's, oh, they're just doing their routine over and over and over. But if this is not happening all the time, that's not what that is. They're like, you just saw into another timeline where that person was actually doing what they were doing. And so that's why they weren't able to respond or couldn't, see you, is maybe they didn't understand what they were looking at. And I was like, at this, that's so true. I now have to go back and relook at every experience I've had.
Michael, so you experienced a time slip?
I have.
Wow.
Twice, actually, that I know of.
Well, this brings me to the question of, like, and Paul and Phil, like, please weigh in on this, because we had a guest that was what took a total, like, I would say, not philosophical point of view, but like he was all about empirical data, and research and like hands-on. And to him, a lot of things could be explained. Where do you draw the line with like experiences that maybe have not been documented by certain researchers, whether it be NIDS or Bigelow, whoever, versus things that are happening that nobody has seen or nobody understands at this point and is beyond research, but maybe this scientist hasn't seen it or he thinks he can explain it with the pantheon or the gauntlet he has. What do you think about that? Because we're in this funny place now where there's an explanation for everything, but then they say we don't know what it is.
Right. And to me, always, when I go and investigate, no matter where it is, I like to go in with a basic understanding of some of the history and maybe certain claims, because that way, if I'm experiencing something, I don't sit there and go, oh my God, I need to go outside because I'm losing my mind. I can go, okay, wait, this is what they told, this is what they mentioned, so I'm just experiencing this. But when it comes to the science versus the experience, at this, I tend to lead personally more towards experience, because there are times when I can say to someone who claims never had a paranormal experience, and I'll go, okay, so you're telling me you've never had like the scent of a flower or smoke or anything appear just randomly out of nowhere? And they go, well, actually, yeah, I have had that. And I look at them and go, you had a paranormal experience at this? And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, at this, because we think a paranormal experience has to be a door closing or a voice coming out of somewhere. We discount everything else. And it's like, that's where I feel like the science goes awry, is at this, because we don't have documentation of this. We discount it. I'm like, you can't discount. Because everybody's not going to walk around with a dictaphone and a camera that's running 24/7 every day. Stuff happens when you least expect it. And so, therefore, we don't have evidence of everything. But with that being said, I also, though, if someone comes up and says, oh, I experienced this, and you're like, well, yeah, I read this in an article, and your experience is verbatim the article, I might ask them a little bit more to see, can they share more than what's in the article, or are they just trying to gain fame by saying, oh, I had this experience because it's a famous article, and claiming false claims, which unfortunately happens.
Michael, it's funny how you talk about certain people who said, yeah, I never experienced anything paranormal. When I was younger and I was going into this nightclub, I don't go in nightclubs now, I'm too old. But when I was younger, I went to this one nightclub, and as I was approaching it, and I was with a couple friends, something kept on telling me, a gut feeling, not to go in that nightclub, that something bad was going to happen. And I told my friends, I said, I'm just going to have a cigarette out here. And actually, I sat in my car because for some reason I was just so scared going into that nightclub. And sure enough, in that nightclub, some guy bumped into a guy and he broke a beer bottle and shoved it into his throat and killed him. And so that gut feeling, I believe, is paranormal. Some kind of ESP premonition of what's going to happen.
I would totally agree with that. There's many times where growing up, I would be driving and then I would get this feeling of take, Route 2 instead of Route 1. And I would. And I'd get home fine, and then I'd read. Sometimes something would happen, sometimes not. But just because nothing happened doesn't mean this is where quantums come into play, is because I altered, nothing happened. Okay, if I had gone Route 1 instead of Route 2, could something bad have happened? Would something bad have happened? We don't know. And so that's where we have to be careful when we're talking about paranormal and getting involved in quantum level stuff, because that opens up a whole new doorway and a whole new pathway that I think we need to get a firm understanding of both before we start combining and going, yes, this didn't happen because on a quantum level, you did this, and because we're going to lose so many people, and they're going to be like, yeah, I mean, as a paranormal field, we're barely getting recognized right now and not laughed out of mainstream places and getting recognition. So the last thing I think we need to do is go, okay, we're going to add this element in, and everybody starts going, yeah, see, this is why we didn't like you paranormal folks, because now you're gone off the deep end again. You're going into and trying to make sense out of who knows what just to make sense of something. And it's like, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you think? Well, if they, for people that try to say, like, the scientists to say, well, Paul, it just happens that people get killed at parties, and yeah, you might have felt like that, but that was going to happen anyway. You know how they try to lump that together, and in your heart the correlation, can be is deeper than that. But how some people, you say the grass is greener on the other side, and they go, I beg to differ, or whatever. So however they're positioning, but what you were saying about the paranormal and not mixing in, I agree. At some point, you do have to have some standard where your truth and your experience, can be.
At this,
for instance, if you thought to yourself, you know what, and God forbid that you think this, but we all do at some point. What if something happened to one of my loved ones? We won't say which one, but you think that, and it makes your heart shudder, and you say, no, I'm not going to think about that. And you believe that there's some power that if you do, hey, I don't want to jinx it, I don't want to do this. So you believe in that power, but then like if you say, hey, let me pick the winning lottery numbers, like how much do you believe that your power to do that is versus that other power? It's like different fields to it. But so I tell you, I'm with you on, once you start, adding these elements and, saying, explaining everything away, then there's nothing that could happen,
Right. And you bring up an interesting point, Zandine, that I was doing a panel with some psychics, and I had a few other psychic guests, and one thing they all kind of had in common was this kind of idea of, everybody will always ask us what's the winning lottery numbers. And their answers, they were telling me they would love to say to people, look, if I could get the winning lottery numbers, do you think I would be doing this right now and sitting here looking like this and not thinking myself? And why would I tell you the numbers when I could go use them myself? And I'm like, that's a truth, people assume because at this, they're in touch with something else out there, whether it's a consciousness or an energy, whatever they want to call it, that they have unlimited access to information. And the truth of it is they have access to what they're given. So one of the things that I've come to learn through my personal experiences and talking with people is the information that comes through is what the universe wants you to know at this time, or your guides or your guardian angels, whatever you want to call them, is in your best interest. So if in your best interest to win the lottery, you're going to get those numbers one way or another. You don't need to go see someone to get them. They may put like a note on your desk that says, hey, there's 25 of this, and you're going to see, oh, and 25 of this, and oh, it's 25 after. And you're going to start to think 25 is a number. Okay, that's coming up a lot. Let's put that in the lottery. And then you may have another number that's repetitive. And so you're going to start putting and combining and going, why am I seeing these 7 numbers repetitively? Hey, let's take a chance and play them on the lottery, and you may win. But people are so wanting that instant answer that they probably, in all honesty, would say, It's just a coincidence. I'm seeing these numbers and never put it together that they were being guided the winning numbers, and may see the lottery and go, I saw those numbers. I could have won. At this, at this,
But-
at this, at this, at this, at this. You're muted, Paul. At this.
Oh, sorry about that. Michael, I'm going to change course a little bit. I'm kind of curious. How is it that you became a Reiki master?
So the story goes, when I was a teenager, I had been dealing with some family issues, and so I thought, okay, I need to heal myself because I'm broken, because this situation is broken, and taking responsibility, for a part that I later found out was not my part to take. But in that instance, I went and sat in a Reiki class with my mom, and these people walked around and were like, okay, everybody's feeling this, everyone passed, and they're like, we're going to walk around a circle and we're going to give you guys symbols. And I was like, okay. And they got behind me. And I don't know if this was actually verbally said or what I heard from them, but they were like, well, you already have this, you're natural at it, so we don't need to put the symbols in you, and moved on. And so I was like, all right, so I'm a natural, so thought nothing of it, thought I could do anything, and was like, yeah. So really didn't get into it. Then in my late 20s, in my 30s, I met a gentleman named Neil who was doing Reiki, and he was doing sessions for his students and at this location, and I went to experience it. And his Reiki was clearing the blockages, but it was also like a channeling session where they would be like, oh, so this issue is on your right side, and I think that's the feminine. So they'd say, do you have an issue with your mom or your grandmother, or who's this feminine energy that's causing you this stress? And so I was like, wait a minute, what is this? And so I went up and I talked to him after that class, and I said, look, I did Reiki 1 already, but it was nothing like this. How do you do this? What's your secret? And he goes, take my class. I'll let you take and do a redo of Reiki 1 at a different price because you've already done it. So I was like, okay. And I went through the class and I was feeling challenged. And so he goes, all right, now Reiki 2 is being offered. And this is what it's going to teach you, is you're going to learn how to get more symbols, use the energy more, and be more of a conduit, get more in tune with everything. And I was like, all right, sign me up. And I'm feeling challenged and everything again. And I go through the coursework and finding my natural rhythm with it. And I'm like, this is more like it. I'm liking this style. This is more what I think really needs to be happening than what happened when I was younger. And I'm not saying they did it wrong. I'm just saying for me, it didn't resonate. So this resonated with me, so I went further with it. And after I finished Reiki 2, I said to him, so is this it? What's next? And he goes, well, there's Reiki 3 and master level. And I was like, so what's master level? And he like kind of laughs and he goes, oh, that just means you can teach someone. And you don't have to do anything special. And I'll just tack it on for like, say, a small price, like way less than a normal course. And I was like, I can't pass this up. How often do you get to say I'm a master of something and you're not paying an arm and a leg to do all this coursework? He's offering in a new way. And so I was like, all right. So I did it. And I had to say that Reiki, the way I describe it is your body becomes a conduit for the energies to come through. I don't actually do anything to anyone. Anybody who says I used my energy to do this or that, either one is doing it wrong because you should never use your energy on someone, and two is the universal energies that are all around us are way more available in an unlimited source. So why would you want to tap your own source? And I realized recently when I was thinking about it is if you claim use your own energy to heal someone, you are now connecting your energy to their energy. So whatever happens to them affects you because you've created this link. And so there's a technique in metaphysics, and I don't know if you all have heard of this or not, but it's called cutting cords. And what it means is, say, we all were in a room together and we were hugging, went our separate ways, and I was like, man, I'm feeling really drained. And Zandine, I'm, not putting this on you, but I'm going to use you as a hypothetical. You had a rough day, you were feeling really tired, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I got this boost of energy. Let's go do this and let's go do that. That's because you siphoned energy from me. And so if we don't cut those cords, you could inadvertently, for as long as it's connected, be siphoning from me. And I could be sitting there every day getting more and more tired and being like, I slept 9 hours. How can I be tired? It's
Wait,
because
so
of the cord.
so he becomes more or less like an energy vampire.
Right.
Oh,
Without knowing it. And so that's why we have that technique and we learn it. And I mean, and the fun thing about cutting cords is when you think about it is, you're visualizing yourself and you're seeing these cords going out all over. And you're like, and it's like, okay. And I know to some people, visualizations can be tedious, but I'm like, yeah. And when I was taught it, they were like, use a scissors to cut these cords, like Sandine was just motioning. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be cutting cords, and you're like, why can't I have fun with this? And so I'm like, some days I may be like, let's get a lightsaber out and cut the cords that are no longer necessary, or use a sword or a dagger, use whatever sharp object, that comes to your mind and have fun with it and be like, yeah. And just be sure to cut the cords that are not beneficial or not necessary, because you may have a cord, say, to your parents or a loved one, and you cut that cord, you inadvertently may start to argue more with your loved one, and a rift and a division may start to appear, and you're like, what's going on? This is so unusual. What happened? It's because you don't have that heart connection anymore. You severed it. So you got to work to reconnect that. So that's why I say cut only the cords that are non-beneficial.
that's really interesting, Michael, because uh, back to the vampire stuff. The energy vampire, and I met a few, like my history teacher. I love history. But when I was going to high school, this one history teacher knew how to put me to sleep in 3 seconds. And he was an energy vampire. Everybody was saying he sucked out your energy. And then you have physical vampires, like your coaches, your drill sergeant. The drill sergeant pushes you and pushes you, and as the weaker you get, the stronger he gets. And he's running backwards and everything else. You got your blood vampires, they get their energy from the blood. And you have your sexual vampires. People like a guy who's a womanizer goes from woman to woman to woman, and he gains all this energy by conquering all these different women. Um, a sexual vampire would be like P. Diddy. The things that he does, and he gets energized from it. And there's people who actually say that when they went to his parties, that it seemed like he was revitalized and he would become stronger. And I think that's what he was. He was a vampire.
Right, and it's important to note too that vampires are on both sides. It's not just one side versus the other. And I know they like to use different terms, but to be honest, it's the same thing. You can have women vampires, male vampires. So I just wanted to clarify that because some people may be watching this and going, well, but what about my ex-girlfriend who I always felt drained by, and she was doing this, and seems like she fits this picture. I'm like, probably because she was. So yeah, and the thing is, as well as, so the interesting thing about the vampires is they really brought it out with in the movie Star Wars. If you, I hope you all have seen that, because if not, this is going to get really awkward really quick. But so Star Wars, you had the Jedi of the light, Sith, who's the dark.
Yes.
Well, when you look at them in metaphysical terms, the Sith are feeding off of the fear and anger of everyone around them. And so they make themselves as fearful as they can, put everybody down, and are feeding off of that. The stronger your anger is, the stronger they are. And that's why you always will hear them, if you pay attention to their dialogue, is, I feel the anger in you. Let it go, because they want it. Where the Jedi are sitting there going, I can't get angry because anger doesn't serve mankind or doesn't serve me. You know, I can't get attached to this because this emotion is not beneficial. So there's where you have the two different views of vampirism. Is you got the ones feeding off the dark, but the Jedi feed off of the good. And if you're not careful, both can be equally detrimental to you. But if you're keeping a balance, then that's what they all were looking for, was the balance. And if you remember, and the movie hasn't been out long enough, so I don't feel like I need to put a spoiler alert on this, but in the end, when you see Rey and Kylo, they both were walking in the dark and the light. They had balanced the energies of both and unified, and that's how they defeated him in the end. People don't realize that's what was going on, is they found the true balance of the dark and the light to walk, and that was the true calling of the one or chosen, or they found the one who's to bring balance to the force. That's the balance they were looking at, is they have awareness of the dark, have awareness of the light. You're able to feel and pull from both to do what you need to do without tipping the scales one way or the other. They found
like the Citra Acra, more like a Citra Acra type of thing.
Right. They found, and so when you hear everyone talking about, yeah, we know we need to be in balance and we need more light in the world. It's not that we need more people focusing only in the light. We need more people to step out of the darkness and go in the shadows and go, okay, I'm aware this part of me exists. I'm okay with it. I can learn from it. It's called shadow work. And it is very crucial, actually, that people do this, because a lot of people don't think, okay, this is bad, so I got to shut it off and put it away and keep myself from ever doing that again, because that's bad. Shadow is not bad per se. It's the perspective we put on it, to where, like, I could go and I could step on a spider and everyone's like, oh my God, you killed that harmless spider. How could you? And I have no remorse over it. That doesn't make me an evil person. That just means I'm okay with, one less spider in the world, and I don't feel like it's going to tip the balance of anything, and I'm okay with that. But if I was to go in and take someone's life, that's totally different. It's the mindset of what's going on and how you perceive it, the value of one over the other.
You're right. Well, there's certain shadows that are like three types of shadows that are just totally dark and never have any light. And then there's that one shadow you were talking about where some light it can actually turn to light. But when I say the three darkest, the shadows that don't have light, that still doesn't mean they can't teach you a life situation. As far as that's like in Kabbalism, they have clip art, which talks about that as well, the four clip arts. And then you have the Sitra Akra, which I referred to before, where darkness, after the light retracted, what was left in the imperfection. People look at it a lot of different ways of how the light and the darkness is, but it's some of the themes you were talking about, I noticed were hitting on some deep stuff like that.
Right, and that's the thing, that when you view the world through the eyes of, in my experience, the metaphysics over mainstream religions, is you're able to take a step out, look at the situation and go, okay, what's really going on here? Okay, and then go back in and react accordingly. Where in religions, to me, I've noticed everyone who I talk to that's very, very dogmatic and everything is, oh my, they may do something and be like, oh my God, I got to go to church and I got to go do this and this to make amends for this. And they start stressing themselves out and they start, going, oh my God, what have I done? And I'm like, my metaphysical side is like, and I'm like, take a step back. So you made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. Let's learn what we need to learn from this mistake and I'm like, incorporate it so we don't do this again. And I'm like, no blame. There is no shame. It's all a learning. And that's the part where, like, wow, I can't believe I'm going to tie this back into the paranormal. And I'm like, when we do paranormal investigations, or we do, talk about experiences with other people about their paranormal side or stuff they've gone through, it has to be a mutual respect of, yes, we experienced this, you experienced that. They are similar this way, they're different this way. And I'm like, my way is not the only way. Your way is not the only way. I'm not right, you're not wrong, and you're not wrong, I'm not right, vice versa. Everyone's right. And we can't discount anyone's experience or anything, because that's their truth. And we, as paranormal investigators, need to put a lid on, well, because this happened this way, this is what's going on, and this is what you're experiencing, so this is how we're going to fix it. because you don't know that. There's no way to know that. We're only guessing what's going on, and I was fortunate to be talking with a panel of investigators and it happened to be the Warren Legacy Foundation. And we were discussing how paranormal investigators are not qualified to ascertain is this experience that you're seeing an apparition, or is it a delusion, like you're seeing, a false image because you have a mental condition? Or, there's so many things we don't think about. And it's like, yeah, and they go, and I agreed with them on this point, is a lot of paranormal investigators will go into someone's house or to a location and go, man, there's a dark, heavy energy here. There's a demon around. There's a demon here. And it's like, we don't know that there's a demon there. It could just be a spirit that was ornery and an ass in life, and he's going to be ornery. And an ass in the afterlife is a lot of people's, viewpoints, and sorry for cussing. But, when we falsely identify stuff, it has a backlash that nobody thinks about, because one example they shared with me on the show was this paranormal team went in and this son was having issues and the investigators went and did their thing and said, oh yeah, there's like close to 80 demons on your son and there is nothing anybody can do to get it off of him.
Fortune cookie.
Well, they reached out to the foundation, and before the foundation could get out there and fix what this team had done, the son took his life.
Oh, Jesus.
And so that's where I'm like, yes, I totally agreed with them that I never, when I'm on an investigation, will say, oh my God, there's a demon here. Because that is a term that, one, has been diluted, and two, I am not viced on scripture enough to say demon versus angel versus God versus anything.
Yeah, well, even if you were, there's so many, there's Mesopotamian demonology. I mean, if you're from Iran, if you're from Iraq, you're Babylonian, there's Greek. But there's so many different pantheons of demons. And we talked about this before, for instance, and they mix it up. Like if you look at The Exorcist, we talked about they have Pazuzu affecting the womb, when actually Cassiade, as far as the Abrahamic pantheon is concerned, is the demon that affects the womb before it's born. It's like a person that has a bad before they hit the ground and running, but in Mesopotamian demonology, Pazuzu is used as a demonic force to offset anybody that's trying to affect the pregnancy. And the way you summon him, his history, who his father was, the 7 winds. There's a lot of history on that and how you summon him. So the difference, they were doing syncretism. They were mixing these pantheons. But the thing about demonology, like you said, if you're gonna, if you believe in that and you're not going to have the right counters for different ones, whether it's Samael, Beelzebub, Limit. There's so many, and their characteristics, once you get off of that, for example, in the Kabbalic, pantheon, there could be like 3,100, you have a lot to consider, minor, small ones, but I'll just say this, what you said about demons and whether you know about it or not, well, you should actually know. If you're anywhere near that field. And so like with Phil, I always, when we're together, we talk to other people, I ask them like, what is their highest source? So like at some point, if you had your highest source that you related to and you thought you talked to them and they told you the rules or told you what to do, you might listen then. But until then, everybody is just saying whatever. But hey, you might meet your God or your your source one day. Who knows?
And Michael, at one time, HPI, my group, Halo Paranormal Investigations, we had 30 members, and I always looked at their professions. And we actually had Stacy Meyer, who happens to be a psychiatrist. And so, with these people with these professional positions, we had something, I think, like 6 police officers, former police officers. With them, we would have our meeting after the investigation and try to determine what exactly was going on. And the psychiatrist, she was able to put out information that professionally I wouldn't really know. And so it's really important too, is people with these certain positions are able to communicate within your group. Also too, we had different type of people who blessed the house. We had a Greek Orthodox, it was me, Catholic. We had Protestant. We had Buddha. We had Hindu. We had Maidu Indian. So we had all these different type of people, and we respected everybody's religion. So what if the occupant says, "Yeah, I'm Hindu," then we would let the person in our group who knew how to do a Hindu blessing. And that's when I had 30 people in my group. Now I have one, and that's Zandini.
You got more than that. You got plenty. You got hundreds, man. Come on, let's stop that. You got rows on.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's great you had that, because I think too, on a side trip of that is, when you have mediums out there and mediums are saying they're sensing this or that and communicating, you have to, as an investigator, trust this person that, they're not just fly by night, going surface level stuff, as I call it, or surface dwelling, going, yeah, there's a guy here, and he said he was, died here, a horrible death. I'm like, well, that is so generic. I could have said that, and I'm not a medium by trade. I'm like, yeah, and so you have to be careful what information you're sharing and how you're sharing it, because when you're on investigations, wherever you are, and you're experiencing something that's personal to you and it's in your framework. So, like, for example, I'll share with you the time slip experience I had, and this may help make what I'm trying to say more clear. Is
Also, too, just real quick, Michael, like the psychic mediums that we had this one psychic medium, a complete nut, who tried to say there was 30 ghosts in the bathroom. And I just looked at her and I said, there's no proof of that, and why would 30 ghosts be in the bathroom? So the psychic medium that we would have, or the psychic mediums that we had, they would have to prove themselves. And we had this one psychic medium. She says there's a ghost sitting on the couch. There was 3 of us. I said, take a picture. We take a picture, and there's this orb hovering over the couch. Then she says, well, now the ghost is behind the couch. We take some pictures, and there's a mist behind the couch. She was proven psychic. She was able to give us information that resulted in something that there was a ghost there. So I'm sorry, Michael. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I have a few mediums that I trust and investigate with, and it's the same thing. Is their information is not their information. It's like, okay, there was a creek here, and there's no way to know if there was a creek there, and that this happened there. And I'm like, okay, you're picking up on something for real. And, I'm feeling it too. I could feel the water. So I'm like, okay, we're in tune. We're in sync. Let's, do this. But so the time slip I'll share with you was I was at Vicksburg Military Park, the battlegrounds, and I was driving. Well, my dad was driving at the time, and my mom was in the front seat. And all of a sudden, I start to smell gunpowder in the air and blood in the air. I hear cannons and gunfire. I start to see what looks like troop movements, and I can feel the heaviness in the air, and the air feels different. Like there's a heat that was hotter than normal for the area. And I was like, this could only be explained by the fact of the battle. All the gunfire, the mortar, the cannonballs, all of those going off, generates heat. So that's why it's so hot. And one of my guests said, because all my senses were firing in that moment, that I had actually slipped into that moment. So as we're driving, I go, yeah, there was a column of Union soldiers moving up this way, and they unexpectedly met Confederates, and there was a skirmish here, and there's no plaques around to explain what I'm seeing and feeling and everything. And so I'm like just spilling this out, and we get to a certain point, and it's like shuts off. And I'm back in the car, and my mom was like, that's the kind of history I think they need to teach in school. How you just explained it was intense and really interesting. But because I was so into the moment, I was able to kind of like psychically pick up, I guess, through a portal that was there back to that day, and somehow came out of it without realizing it. And so that's the type of investigation methods I try to bring every time, is immerse myself in going, okay, what's going on here? Who is here? Where am I feeling this? And I may walk past a room and get a spidey sense or a tingling on my arm. And I'll turn and go into that room and be like, something wants me in this room. And sure enough, I'll sense or feel something in there. Can I prove something was in there? No. Did I hear something? Sometimes. But what I do when I'm with a bunch of people who are experienced or new is, and I'm leading, I will say to everyone, do yourself a favor right now before we enter this location. Clear your mind of every expectation you have of what's going to happen. Clear your mind of every claim, of every ounce of history. Just totally blank yourself out. And I'll be like, so let me know when you're done with that. And inevitably, somebody will be like, well, why do I want to do that? And I go, well, here's the simple, honest truth of this. You go in and you say, okay, this place has doors slamming, so I'm going to experience a door slam. And there are balls moving on the floor, toys moving around, and whispers, and everyone's hearing voices. And you're like, man, this place is a dud. Nothing's happening. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? All this stuff was happening around you. Well, because you were so focused on wanting the door, you missed everything else. So that's why I say you have to empty yourself out, no expectations, no outcome, in your mind whatsoever. Then you're ready to investigate, because I found that's when I could start hearing disembodied voices, would see apparitions, mist forming, And all of this stuff I would miss before because I was totally of the mindset of this is what a paranormal experience is, and that's what it has to be, or nothing happens.
Hey, Michael, guess what? It's almost time to call it quits. You are a fantastic guest. You really laid out some information. We've learned a lot from you. Thank you for being a guest. Phil, Zendine, you got anything to say to Michael? You got anything to promote?
Get you next time.
What was that, Zandine?
I'll get you next time on your favorite UFO experience or sighting. I'll get you next
I'm
time.
happy to come back anytime.
Right. Yes, sir. It's a pleasure having you.
Well, it was
Yes.
a pleasure being here and a pleasure to meet you all. And before I promote anything, did you have a question or comment, Phil?
No, just thank you very much for being on the show tonight. Sorry I didn't have more questions for you, but I enjoyed listening to you.
Oh no! As a host, I'm right in your shoes, Phil, and those are the shows I love the best. Is when I don't have to put a lot of effort in, and the guest does it all for me.
And Michael,
Right.
you gave me flashbacks when you're talking about falling down. I fell off a one-story house roof when I was 7 years old in Fresno and sprained my ankle.
Well, fortunately, it wasn't a bad sprain, or you were recovered from it. And I, to be honest, I don't know why I don't why I was spared injury in that experience at two. And I will say though, as I mentioned, my friend in Greece seeing my energy having special protection around it. I had another guest said she's seen symbols that she's never seen in my energy field that's protecting me. And then I had a third guest who tried to read my mind without asking me. And she said, when I tried to read your mind, I saw like a tornado around you. And whenever I tried to touch and reach into the tornado to make contact, my hand would be bounced out. And I was like, well, yeah, because one, you didn't have permission. And two, why are you, going in my mind without asking?
Well, yeah.
Because that's not cool to do. But in the moment, I knew what she was doing on the show, and so I wasn't really on those lines. I was like, well, thank you for confirming, this level of protection around me and describing it, because the way she described it was I was balancing a lot of plates on sticks, spinning and keeping them spinning while this tornado is going on around me. So she's like, I don't know how you're balancing everything, but you are. So keep doing what you're doing. And with that, so what I have going on to answer your question, Paul, is I have my Tuesday night show, Riding Through the Unknown, which is at 9 o'clock Central.
Okay.
I have my esoteric series where I delve into UFO questions of are they UFOs, or are they inner Earth, hollow Earth UFOs, or are they extraterrestrial UFOs? Because they're not all the same. And that is 3 Wednesdays a month at 8 o'clock Central. And coming back in October is Paranormal Versus, where I have a podcast show with Kel Atkinson and Matt Atkinson in the UK. And we talk about all kinds of topics in the paranormal, from conspiracy theories in the paranormal to your normal investigations. So I have all of that going on, and at the same time, I get to do interviews with awesome people like you all. And so that is a lot of fun for me as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Okay. We got you on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. All right.
and you definitely put it together. Energy to energy.
Yes. My esoteric series, I love the title of Riding Through the Unknown because I kept looking and I spent like 3 days looking and I was like, man, all the really cool titles were taken. And then it's like, man, what if I put this word with this word and it was nowhere to be found? I was like, I'm taking it. Search is over. I'm taking it.
Just right. No, good though. It is a good name. Sure.
So yeah, I feel for everyone who's starting new podcast shows now because I'm like, good luck finding a title that's not in use or really close to another show's
You have
title.
to use a TED Talk title or something to attract people nowadays.
Yeah, it seems like the hardest part.
Yep. Like then you'll have it and then you'll be like, oh man, I didn't look at this place and there's like 5 variations of it already there. It's like back to square one.
Yep. Got to do the search, see if anything comes up, and then if nothing comes up, jump on it quick.
Yeah, actually, how I ended up with Riding Through the Unknown was I did a Google search with unknown and riding or surfing, and I wasn't finding anything. And I figured if it ain't on Google, it doesn't exist because Google seems to have its fingers in everything. So I was like, it's not on Google. I'm taking it.
I heard that. I heard that, man. I'll make sure.
Oh, thank you again, Michael. Truly appreciate your time tonight. And,
Yes, thank you.
Back anytime.
So,
I'd be happy to. Just let me know if you ever need a guest, and I'll be there in a heartbeat if I can be.
Awesome.
thank you. We appreciate that.
Awesome. Appreciate that, brother.
Well, I appreciate you all, and oh, you can't see. I put my hand on my heart. I realized looking at the screen, I was like, wait, y'all didn't even see that. I was like, oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, man, we got so much more to talk about. Real society, so much UFO stuff. It's crazy. We're gonna hit it.
And as you see, Michael, I'm at Easter Island, so I got to catch my plane and get back to Sacramento.
Yeah, we don't want to
I am totally jealous. Yeah, and I'm wondering, how long did it take you to pose for the statue?
well, I had to find a nice place to sit at and everything else. The sun's going down, so yeah. And I got to do some investigation out there.
Michael, let Phil tell you about his disco. Next time he was protected, you were protected, but his ankle got hurt. But he went on to be a dancer and a skater, man. So who knows? Who figures?
Oh, I know. We talked about it on the show.
All right, everybody. Have a great night.
All right.
Thanks again.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.